Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Triton Talk. I am the Director of Athletic Communications, Amanda Green, and I'm very excited to announce a new series of Triton Talks this summer that we're going to put out where we're talking with our alumni. So our very first alumni Triton Talk, I'm really excited about because it's somebody who works in the same field as me, so we have a lot of similar things going on. So let me introduce Roven Yau. Roven is a 2005 graduate. He worked in various departments within the athletics here, particularly sports information. He went on to work at the University of Florida for a year and has spent the last 15 years working with the Toronto Raptors. So how are you doing today, Roven?
Good. Thank you for having me, Amanda. I'm really excited about this.
Me too. All right, so you wanted to start off with a little bit something different for our interview?
Yeah, figured we'd play a little game since you and I have a similar background, sort of understanding the work that we do behind the scenes for athletics, particularly Eckerd. So I asked Amanda we'll do a little show and tell. I think we'll do maybe 2 items,
Okay.
Something that kind of either helps you individually or has some meaning that helps you kind of get through what we do. It sort of inspires us to kind of keep doing what we do.
Okay.
So do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. Okay. I kind of took from, I guess these inspire me. These kind of go together. They're my 2 media passes that kind of mean the most to me. Okay. So this one is our 2017 women's basketball regional. I had literally 1 month on the job. I was still an intern, I guess, at that point, and we hosted the regionals. And I just remember, I know a lot of people would have kind of been, were stressed out, nervous and everything. I mean, I was a little bit anxious, but I just remember kind of being in the thick of it and just going, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is what I want to do with my life. I loved every aspect of it. And, then we were also kind of in the heart of baseball, softball, tennis, sailing, everything else like that. So it was stressful, but very fun to go through all that and get a real taste, especially, just a month in of what I, would be doing for my life. And then my other media pass is from our baseball regional last year. So, shout out to the SSC Bad Boys. We won our first conference championship in 38 years. And this was the first time I really got to travel with a team for postseason. I've been with a couple teams, like tournaments, different stuff, but I had kind of sat through every baseball game the past few years, and I remember getting really excited when I was told I was going on that trip. We went to Delta State, which is in Mississippi. I remember car on the way home, but when I got told I was, blaring Mississippi Queen, just that's me. I get to be the Mississippi Queen.
Yeah.
I was so excited, and it was just a really special trip to be there with our team, and we had a different, special energy and culture last year, and so kind of. Those ones are 2 special passes for me.
Awesome. So similar along those lines, my freshman year was the 2000-2001 season, and we hosted the men's regional basketball tournament at the MacArthur Center that year. And a lot of similar things, and it was a scramble. I remember Coach Ryan was painting walls and we were moving furniture around, and I was a freshman, so I didn't know what was going on. I started out doing the public address announcing that year, and I didn't know anything about NCAA athletics and about how when you get in a tournament, everything is neutral site. So Coach Harley and I were really good. We became really good friends my first year, and I knew he was trying to look out for me, but I went to him one time and I said, Coach, what do you need me to do? And he said, well, we don't know if we're going to use you on the PA system because it's a tournament game, but make sure you come back and we'll figure something out. So the day before, he told me, he said, Roven, I need you to come tomorrow and you're going to be the backup PA announcer. That's what your role is going to be. Okay, so I show up in the athletic office the next day, and there's an old SID, his name is Walter Riddle. He was at St. Leo, but he was working for the conference office at the time. I introduced myself. I said, Walt, I'm here. Coach Harley told me that, I'd be helping out as a backup PA announcer. And he just looked at me and he said, what the heck is a backup PA announcer? Why do we need one?
Right.
So it was kind of an eye opener to sort of, that NCAA level of things. And I'll never forget, that was one of the loudest I ever heard in the MacArthur Center.
Really?
Because it was on campus, and I think we may have gotten a first round bye, so it was a second round game. I can't remember. But Tampa was also in our bracket, and we ended up playing them. And obviously, like, there's a big rivalry with that, being so close. And they ended up beating us and went on to win the tournament. So that was my introduction as well to SSC rivalries, and I never forgave Tampa for that.
Definitely.
So mine, I got one of the things, I don't think you do them anymore, but back when I first started in the industry, media guides were a big thing. So I actually have behind me a collection of media guides that I've kept along the way that, sort of helped inspire me, and kind of, they're fun to look back at, especially 20 years later, because you can see how things have grown, and the people, sometimes you forget, but you know that you're a part of it. So I was going through some. This would have been the year before that I came in, the 99-2000 men's basketball. So this would be
in my office.
Coach Ryan.
Yeah. Oh, that's
and then you got Gillespie there.
Yeah.
So they were both obviously the coaches when I first started. And then on the women's side, this would have been the same year. So there's Paulie. We were splitting time with in admissions. So yeah, that's always been something, like, I've moved around a couple places, and I've just always kept them, even though we don't do media guides anymore. Research was always, like, important to me. So I got another one. This was so this was my freshman year. That was the 2000-2001 postseason guide for the women's team. We went to Lakeland that year. I remember that game. We played Florida Southern in the first round, and I think up until a few years ago, so 16-12 was their final record. I think that stood as, like, one of the better seasons that women's basketball had until Paulie took over. And then, but we played Florida Southern that year, and they were, like, I think they were one of the favorites, and took them to close. I think we either lost in overtime, or there was a controversial call on a breakaway foul. But we ended up losing that game. But yeah, I don't know. Just, I've probably seen over, like, 15,000 or 1,500 basketball games in my life, and there's ones, from those early years at Eckerd that you still remember. And it's funny because, like, you kind of remember the losses a little bit more than you do the wins. But the wins definitely, for sure. Like, there's ones that stick out.
Yeah, no, I think the losses do kind of stick, on what happened and everything like that. But like you said, the media guides, we don't do them anymore, but I still have, like, a stack in my office of all of our old ones. So it is fun whenever you kind of just look through one. I always try and pick one that would have one of our staff members here and, see their face. And so then I'll just, go show them the picture and kind of get a good laugh out of it.
Yep. We put a lot of work into them back then. They weren't easy to do.
That kind of ties into, so I brought something else for my show and tell. This is my poster. So it's not, I think it's kind of taken the place of media guides-ish in promoting everything. But that was my first project that got printed. And so, I just taken a lot to put into it, and getting all the people into the right position and everything to form this one big collective piece. So that it definitely sticks out as something that I'm really proud of, and, kind of I look at, I got it on my window and everything.
Yeah. And definitely, that's another change that I've noticed in the work of the SID role. You guys do a lot of graphics work now, and images, posters, and promotional stuff. And the tools that you have to work with are, like, so much better than what we did, back in 2000.
Right, definitely.
So for my second one, a lot of people ask about this, especially in the last year. So this is what we all work for at this level. Can you see it okay?
Yeah.
So this is a 2019 NBA championship ring.
That's huge.
So it has the largest diamond ever put on a championship ring in the middle, and forms the Larry O'Brien trophy. They say there's 600 diamonds in this thing.
Probably. It looks like
probably true. So this one has our names on one side, and then 2019 champions on the other side. And then there's a bunch of engravings. I don't know if you'll be able to see on the camera, but on the inside,
yeah,
there's a bunch of engravings in there, and we each got to have our own personal engraving as well. So I put Matthew 619 on mine just as a reminder, not only for myself, but for, my kids, if it gets passed down to them, that, as much as we all work and strive for these things, I mean, this is definitely a dream come true, but it's not, this isn't it, there's so much more to what we do, and the way we impact people and connect with people that we work with. That's more important. You can't take this with you when you go. That's essentially what, I hope my kids learn. And, when people see this, it brings a lot of joy and happiness, which is cool, but it's not, it's not something at the end of the day that you can bring with you when your time's done. So it's kind of a reminder for me.
Yeah, you can bring the memories, and the people have their memories of you. That's definitely true. All right, so I have to ask, do you wear the ring much? Did you just...
I wear it around the house more. I brought it to All-Star with me, and I've brought it on a few road trips. I think after you've been somewhere for 15 years, we weren't a team that was good the whole time that I've been here. So, and I definitely realized that after we won, you start to root for the next guy that hasn't won it. And, you feel blessed when it does happen. So, I don't mind bringing it to games and to, to show people that I know who appreciate it. 'Cause, it's not guaranteed. There are people that have done this longer than I have who haven't come nearly as close, to getting one of these. And I hope they get one, 'cause there are a lot of teams, and I'm sure Devil Ray fans, or Rays fans, as they call themselves now, kind of have that feeling like you came close, and then you kind of fall back, and it feels like you're never going to get there again. Just like Bucks fans probably, just want to get to the playoffs. There was a part of me that felt like, wow, like getting to the finals might be as good as it gets. And, there's some of those folks who never get to experience the next step to it. And, definitely I'm one of the lucky ones.
Right.
In that sense.
No, that's pretty cool. That's awesome. All right. So do you want to head on into the questions?
Sure.
Okay. So as I talked about, you're in athletic communications, and I know that, no 2 days in the athletic communication world are really the same. But if you could you kind of walk us through, what you do a day in the life as being a senior manager of basketball communications?
Sure. So I sort of break down what we do in two categories. One are game days, and the other are non-game days. The non-game days can be anything from, usually a practice, but sometimes if there's no practice, then there's still other things going on that our players are doing. In my current role, I primarily deal with our players. I remember when I first got to the University of Florida, I thought, like the big name, the players, especially the marquee players, were sort of off limits. And then realized quickly that when you get to, the bigger stages of this industry, those are sort of what you need to deal with them, especially on a regular basis. So I have a lot of contact with, with obviously our starters and our all-stars, and because they get the most requests.
Right.
So a lot of it is sort of, we build it in cycles. There's some routine things that have to get done on non-game days. Obviously, if we practice, we have media availability. We try to make 2 players available, in a scrum to the general, to our writers that come. We're in the 5th largest market, or one of the larger markets here in the NBA. So we do get a lot of requests when we're at home, and we'll work with the media team here and try and filter through, what's worth their time, what's not worth their time. Especially after practice is generally a good time to get things done. So even if a guy's not doing a scrum with with a group of people, we might be doing like a side interview, with a TV station here, or getting ahead on a story that, is coming, in a week or two. Sometimes we get projects from our community folks and our ownership, PSAs and videos and things like that. So, your day gets filled up pretty quick, trying to get all of those requests done. NBA players don't like to hang around very long. So, practice generally runs from 11 in the morning till 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They're out of there by 2:30 or earlier.
Right.
Before that, the NBA has a requirement for our game notes, which are due usually the day after a game by noon. So for a long time, I was one of the primary game note writers. So get up after, a game and, spend 2-3 hours just writing what your next note should be. And it just it continues on, and turns into your end of season guide, which turns into your media guide for next year. So a lot of the research stuff, statistical information carries over, but it's sort of like chipping away at it, for a couple hours every morning, and then going to practice, dealing with interviews. And like I said, usually by 2:30, 3 o'clock, everybody's kind of cleared out. And then you start, working on things that prep for the game the next day. More at home, we generally have shoot arounds in the morning. So I'll get in usually around, if we shoot around at 10, I try to get in around 9, an hour before, if I need to get, in front of a player to, ask them something or just to confirm something, that's a good time to do it. Try to get some, I'm responsible for setting up the seating on the score table. So I like to do that early in the morning, before all our tech people come in and take up all their, set up all their equipment. Once they set it up, it's hard to move. So that's why I try to get in early. For the most part, 95% of the time, it's very routine. But there are some games that are a little more high maintenance, like when ESPN and TNT come in. And then when we get to the playoffs, there's different requirements and there's different numbers in terms of what the visiting team is bringing and what we have to supply. So it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, because one team who travels with we're required to put 3 seats for radio down on our second row score table. There's some teams they only have 1 radio announcer, so I'll leave 2 seats for them. That gives me 1 extra seat to play with. So I have some flexibility in those games. And then there's other games where they need 4 seats. So all of a sudden I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I squeeze an extra seat in? So you just kind of move people around, and it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Usually I don't go home after shoot around. I'll stay and take care of if the visiting team needs anything. And then there's a bit of a break in the afternoon to try and get ahead on some stuff. Our games usually start moving around 4:30 with players coming back in to warm up. Usually play the game. Then, we do a pregame media availability in the locker room, and we make our coach available. Sometimes we do TV interviews with the coach, and sometimes we do TV interviews with the players before the game. Once the game ends, we have some TV walk-off interviews, and then we go back to the locker room afterwards and do media for that. That one is obviously dictated very much on what happens during the game. So sometimes you have to, pull a player aside before he talks to the media and go over messaging and make sure that they kind of protect themselves. And, sometimes in the case of injuries, you just don't know what the information is. So, you try and talk to your media and figure out, okay, buy yourself a little bit of time until you can figure out exactly what's going on. And then the next day you kind of get up and you do it all over again, go back to practice. There's very rarely do we have more than 2 days in between games. And then we also have our road games, which you do a fair amount of traveling for. So on those days, sometimes we practice and then head straight to the airport. and then fly to where we always fly the day before a road game. So we spend the night in the city, unless we're on a back-to-back, in which case we fly straight out after a game and then land usually like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then get up the next day and kind of do it all over again.
How often do you travel with the teams? Are you with every road game?
I don't do every road game. We have a team of 3 of us. We kind of rotate and split. It just depends. With the last few years, there's certain cities that, we each enjoy going to. And then there's some cities that are, more demanding than others. So, I like going to New York. It's busy. There's a lot of stuff happening. Obviously from a media standpoint, you have a lot of things at your fingertips that you can use to accomplish stuff. So especially during award season, player awards or all-star campaigns, if I see on the schedule that there's a New York trip coming up, I'll usually ask for that, just because we can get a lot of stuff done. I've got a really good contact list of heavy hitters, and if I feel like it could help our player gain a little publicity going into the all-star voting period, or for last year, like we used a lot of stuff in New York for Pascal Siakam when we were lobbying for him to get most improved player, and same thing for the coach. We had Dwayne Casey win Coach of the Year a couple years ago, and Nick Nurse would be in the running this year. So yeah, I like those trips where you can sort of knock off a lot of things at once. But there are some trips that are nice too. They're maybe quieter cities, and maybe you have some friends there, and you can visit. So like Orlando for me is one that I really enjoy because it's close to Eckerd, so I can visit a lot of friends and yeah. So yeah, we just kind of have our favorites.
That's cool. All right, so you touched on this earlier when you showed us your ring, but you've been with the Raptors for 15 years now. And we know last year, you have the ring, a historic season. So, what was it like covering the finals and covering, such a historic season?
The finals was really cool. I think for me, it was sort of, there's 2 times in my career that I remember where it felt like everything kind of came together. It was game 1 of the NBA Finals, and then when I was with the Gators in 2006 at the Final Four. And a lot of it, we talked about it, and I'll continue to talk about it a lot, is the relationships that you build within the industry. Walking into the NBA Finals and knowing all of the media people that are there in the workroom, when Michael Wilbon comes over and chats with you, and you get time alone with Stephen A. Smith and Doris Burke and all these, and Marv Albert, stops you to talk, like those, like it feels like all the work that you put in during those, years when you weren't winning, or you're up on the phone talking with somebody at 1 o'clock in the morning, all those little things that you do to help build relationships along the way kind of come into one place and one time, and it's like it's all there. And so for me it was really cool too, because there were some former coworkers that came back for that game, and it was like a trip down memory lane. So there was a time where we didn't think we would ever get to the NBA Finals, so to be in the position to be there courtside and to see all of my former colleagues and all the media people that were happy for me personally, that was cool. And then at the Final Four in 2006, all the time that I spent at Eckerd was a really big part of it. When I interviewed at Florida, I remember they asked me, like, why do you want to come here? And I said, I want to be where the big games are. And it's not, Eckerd was a lot of fun. The Sunshine State Conference in Division II is a lot of fun. It's some of the best memories I've had working in the industry. I think just as a young person, like we all strive for that, and we all want to be there. So for me, a year removed from Eckerd, being at the Final Four, I was walking around when we first arrived, and I'm looking down the street and like, there's Coach K, there's Roy Williams, there's Bill Self. Like I knew there's Mike Davis was a hot coach at the time because he had just left Indiana. And And then I get a call from Coach Gillespie. He's like, "Hey, I'm up here in Indiana. Like, meet me for dinner." Coach Harley was there with his grandson. So seeing people that were part of my journey from earlier years, and then seeing sort of like what you've always worked towards in the present, that was really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely awesome. I know Eckerd always kind of is there for you and will follow you, and it's always awesome that way.
Yeah. We talked yesterday and we said we were going to set the record for like most shout outs. So I actually have a list of people that I'm going to shout out on here. I'll see how many I can knock off of the list here today.
Okay, at the end, if we don't get to anybody, we'll name them real quick. Okay, so I guess you're going to get a shout out right here with my next question. You know, in the NBA, you get to see a lot of celebrities courtside, and I've seen pictures of you kind of sitting right behind Drake. So I have to ask, are you guys friends?
Acquaintance probably is a better term. I first met Drake, I think it was 2011 or 2012 at our foundation event. He did a private a concert for our team that year. I want to say it was right around the time he was releasing his first album, and we've just kind of passed each other in the hall ever since then. So he's cool. Like, he comes over and he says hello, and I'll say he's very respectful of our space, you know, as a team, and he's just like a really big fan. You know, like, you can't replace that, and you can't fake that. He just loves the Raptors so much, and he's so happy that, you know, that he gets to be involved and in the middle of it all. So it helps us. I try not to like necessarily talk to celebrities.
Makes sense.
There have probably been a few times where, you know, you see somebody and you're kind of like, that'd be really cool to meet that person. The most recent one that I remember was last year in the second round. Dabo Sweeney called me on the phone when I was in Philadelphia, and he said, you know, somebody gave me your number down in Miami, said you could help me out, come into a game. And I was like, yeah, I'll help you come to a game. So he flew up to Toronto with his sons, and we hooked him up with tickets. And a couple of days before, I asked him, like, you know, Dabo, has anybody, you know, he goes to the NBA games, but I asked him, like, have you ever shot on an NBA court? And he said, no, nobody's ever asked me before. I said, well, what if I could arrange it so for you and your sons to play pickup on a court, like the NBA court? He said, that would be amazing. So we got it done. We blocked off the court for an hour for him at the arena. So him and his sons came in and they played, and we had our digital team capture it all, and we turned it into a sort of like a home video for him, so that they always remember it. And you know, that was really cool. That was really cool. He was like exactly what I imagined he would be like. Yeah. And, you know, we still text every now and then, just check in and see each other. And, you know, I'm lucky I got a standing invite to go to Death Valley at some point. So that's cool.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome to go there. I'm glad you create a family moment for him on the court too. Mm-hmm. All right. So another star we're going to name here. So last year, I believe Kawhi Leonard's laugh became sensationalized, and I know I'm definitely guilty of trying to impersonate it as well. So once that came out, you know, what was that like, and, you know, how did your approach to media requests then change?
So in that situation, you got to feel it out with the player. Some guys respond well to it and don't mind the attention. Obviously, Kawhi was new for us at the time. So there was a lot of sensitivity about throwing him, you know, right out there to do things. Now, if people forget, that was actually the first day that I'd met him. And the next day we had to use him again for practice. So, you know, in the thought process, it's like, okay, I know everybody thinks this is like a funny thing and a big deal, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, like, I need him to take care of like some of these news things too. Right. So it starts with communicating with the player and just kind of feeling out like, what do they like to do and not do. And for him, it was like very much like anything that he does, like the reputation speaks for itself. He didn't want to do a ton of stuff. He didn't want to make it a big deal. So, we don't mind being the bad guys in those situations and saying no to people. But, Kawhi was good for me. During the year, we had a good rapport going, and we got stuff done. It took a little while, but we got stuff done, and that was the key thing.
So what's it like when you have someone who's a bit more shy or doesn't want to approach topics like that? How do you kind of encourage them?
Yeah, it starts a little bit at a time. I think from my experience, dealing with a wide variety of different athletes was helpful. I know I probably talk a lot about my experience with basketball, but especially at Eckerd, I dealt with all the different sports that were there. I think at the time we had 11, and you kind of learned that like not all athletes are the same. And just same thing with basketball players, they're not all the same. You kind of have to, you'll see patterns in the way that people behave and respond to certain things, and it gives you sort of a blueprint of how to approach it. But definitely learned early on that tennis players were different from volleyball players, from softball players, and baseball players, and basketball players. And one of the key things that you learn is just to treat people as human beings. Don't pigeonhole them. Don't try to cookie cutter. Okay, this is how I have to deal with it. It's very much, okay, sometimes it's a situation where you just present the issue to somebody, let them think about it. You obviously can't be afraid to approach them about it.
Right.
But over time, if you sort of prove to them that you have their best interest in mind, they start to respond a little bit more. And not everybody likes doing media, even professional athletes, obviously, they don't all like doing it. And I get it. I've been around long enough to know that it's not for everyone, but it's part of the business. It's part of what we do. And I always tell those players, look, I'm here for you. As long as you keep talking to me, as long as you keep giving me feedback, we'll figure out a way to make it so that you're serviceable and helpful to them, not only for yourself, but for for our media group as well. So it just begins with talking, and that's the key thing. And obviously, if you have a lot of experience in a particular industry or a particular sport, it makes it a lot easier. So building up some connections with who he might know, or not necessarily Kawhi, but any player, if you can sort of connect the dots, like, oh, I know, you're SID from this school, or there was an assistant coach on a team that you played with that I know. All of those little things kind of help.
Definitely. And so we kind of just touched on it there of building relationships. But so a lot of our student athletes express interest in working in professional sports or working specifically in, media relations, communication field. What tips, strategies, advice would you have for them?
I would say get involved. That's the first key thing. At a place like Eckerd, what makes it unique is you can be very hands-on. You can get a lot of a wide variety of experience, and that'll help you sort of figure out what you're good at and what you're not good at, and what you like and don't like. Each sport, presents its own challenges. One of the things I remember working from volleyball was like how fast it was.
Right.
I never really watched a lot of volleyball growing up, but to sit courtside and see, the athletes jumping up and how fast the rotations were, like it gives you a greater appreciation for it. Bill Thornton, who has been there forever, is like my mentor when it comes to all things stats. And his ability to process the game and to see it from his perspective and understand sort of the history of what the tools that they used before to tabulate numbers and stats. It was another like amazing thing to see. Soccer was a little bit more slower pace. Like I kind of struggled with it because of it was slower pace. So you're not on your computer like typing things as frequently as basketball or even baseball. I think it may have changed now, but like it was really hard to figure out like assists in soccer. Because back in 2000 we didn't have any replay, so you really relied on the bench to yell like, number 12 got the assist. Like you knew who scored, but like sometimes you weren't necessarily like paying attention to every
Right.
detail of the pass. And so, soccer, but those are challenges that, you don't really appreciate unless you do it. It's not that I would never work soccer. I have a different perspective of it now, having done it and understanding the pace and sort of like where your attention has to be in different sports.
Right. And I would say we still shout out to the bench a little bit whenever we're trying to figure out. I now designate one of my work studies as your spotter, and your job is to follow each touch and who's tracking the ball.
Yeah. Because back then it was still VHS tape, so like at least now you might be able to like rewind on a digital feed. But like we had VHS tapes back then, so if it was rolling, like you had to wait until after the game to go back and see like, was it that player that got it? And then there were times too where some stuff would crash and something like piece of equipment would break, and you'd have to go back on the tape and redo the entire game and just do it based on tape.
Right. So like you just said it there, looking at things on tape. So obviously that's changed a lot now. We have kind of not instant replay, but kind of close to it. So how has athletic communications changed over that time, from when you were at Eckerd and then even from your time working with the Raptors?
The speed. Social media changed a lot of stuff. The internet changed a lot of stuff. When I was at Eckerd, the internet was just starting to become mainstream. We were still using phone data lines. So even when I went on road games, I'd have to type up my game story really quick. It was just not even a dedicated athletic website. I think we had to upload it to the college website, and then it got posted to the athletic web page. But you couldn't work on it on the bus because there was no cellular data. It was all, you need to have a phone line.
Right.
And even in the MacArthur Center, it was a big deal when we got Ethernet cords in there. And our ability to just do things like at a higher speed, even download music and things like that. It was now it's how fast information travels. Literally, you're talking about minutes and not even hours anymore for when something can get out there and be a good thing or a bad thing. And you have to be able to react to it and understand the tools that you're working with and the people that you're working with, and what the pros and cons of all the different scenarios are. So I would say that's the biggest thing. I think the other thing too, like in the NBA is, and our players sort of grow up understanding this, is that everybody is watching. So, one of the things that I was saying before about, being at a place like Eckerd is it's a nice sort of safe environment to make a mistake and not have the weight of everything coming down on you. At the University of Florida has so many, obviously a much bigger fan base than Eckerd, not necessarily as big as the NBA. So if you make a mistake at Florida, it's the same thing as, almost like pro sports. It could turn into a big, big deal. But I was lucky. I remember George Meese when he was the interim athletic director. I can't remember the specifics of it, but he may have given me a piece of information that I accidentally told somebody else, and it may have gotten him in trouble. So sorry, Professor Meese. But those are the mistakes that you can make in an environment like Eckerd. I remember he pulled me aside and he didn't scold me for it, but it was a good learning moment,
Right.
And definitely if I made that same mistake trying to start in the industry here today, I probably wouldn't have a job.
Right. All right. So kind of coming back to Eckerd, what was your favorite memory as a Triton?
I probably should have thought about this one harder, because there's so many little moments along the way, and there's still new moments that get created.
Mm-hmm.
I still think it was the 2003 men's basketball tournament. We went to Rollins and we finally beat them to get into the Elite Eight. And then to go to the Elite Eight again was sort of like my first taste of like finally getting somewhere that you'd always, for at least 3 or 4 years, we wanted to get there, and we always fell just short of it. So To see Eckerd on CBS playing. I forgot, we played Queens College that year. We ended up losing in the first round, but it was just it was a taste of like we finally made it on the big stage.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, did I go back to more show and tell? I actually think.
Go ahead.
I got my T-shirt from that. South Region champions that year.
Oh, that's awesome.
I actually have every T-shirt from all of our division titles. I have all of the NCAA tournament T-shirts from when I was at Eckerd.
Right.
And got the NCAA tournament T-shirt too. So
cool. I have many probably, but I'm keeping my collection going at home as well.
This one was a gift that Dean Hallen, he was the dean of admissions for a long time, sent me before I came to Eckerd because he knew I was a big baseball fan, and I just kind of kept it ever since.
That's so cool.
I got a whole bag full of T-shirts that I don't think I'll wear again. I don't know if my kids will appreciate it, but they mean a lot to me.
No, I have the same amount. I've seen people, they do, I don't know if you put them into like a big quilt.
Yeah.
That's something popular right now, so maybe that's an idea for you to.
Yeah. There was another one I was going to bring, and this is sort of what makes Eckerd special and what makes me feel good about being a Triton. I had two jackets. One was from the women's basketball team. It was a red warm-up jacket. We were Reebok at the time. Coach Schultes gave it to me, I think my second year. And it was the first time I got like a team issued apparel. So, for a non-athlete, that was a big deal. Like it made me feel like I was actually part of something, which is again, a unique element of being at Eckerd, to be like a non-athlete and still made to feel like you're part of the team. I remember the tennis team invited me to their end of season dinner that year. And then I went through a 3-year period at one point where because I was away from home, I didn't get any Christmas presents for 3 straight years. And Catherine Turnbow, who was the desk ID that I was working with at the time, went and got me the travel sweatsuit that the men's basketball team had that year. So it was like a black Reebok sweatsuit or tracksuit. And, it's like you're walking around campus and you see the basketball players and, the athletes wearing their gear. And it's like, to get one of those, that was cool. And to have it be like my first Christmas present in 3 years made it even more special. So I have those. I couldn't find them. They're in a bag somewhere, but I won't get rid of it.
Oh, that's so awesome. I didn't know that. I do definitely know what you're talking about, getting the, first shirt and everything like that. I remember I had always been on kind of camera duty, and my first time coming down to the scorer's table, I got a shirt to wear that day, and I was so excited. I was like, I'm official. Look at me now. Yeah. I was taking pictures, sending them to my parents, my friends, everything like that. So
yep. It's like those test passes. It's like a badge of honor.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so my last question here. What is your favorite thing about Eckerd as a whole?
Okay, so I got one more show and tell item.
Okay.
It's up here. It's another one of those things that's just kind of traveled with me. So this is Peter Akintola was with us my senior year. This was a picture of him. We played Florida Southern. I think it was in the second round of the South Region tournament at Valdosta State. We won the first. I think we beat them, Florida Southern, obviously another team that I hate. So that felt good. And then we lost in the second round. Coach Ryan, for what I can't remember the reason why, but we had this like pimped out party bus that we rode up to Valdosta State on. And yeah, I remember that was like, it felt good that year. And especially beating Florida Southern in the first round and getting close to the Elite Eight again. But yeah, we came back, and for those of you who don't know the story, Peter passed away a couple weeks later, playing pickup at the MacArthur Center. And that was tough, as a, 18, 19-year-old, student trying to, it was probably the first death that I had to process. And sort of what makes Eckerd special for me. And I watched the award show on Saturday, and I saw Tony Brunello was named Professor of the Year, and it kind of reminded me. He invited me to a class my junior. It was the year that Peter passed away. So I was doing a softball column for the St. Pete Times, on the side while I was going through school. And Tony Brunello was a softball coach at, I think, Lakewood Little League. So we got to know each other through that. So he invited me to be in his class, even though I wasn't a political science major. And Peter passed away. I skipped class that week, which I think everybody understood. And then I got a call from him the next week. And he basically, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I remember he asked me, like, are you planning on skipping class again? And this was still, like, it was still fresh on campus. People were still kind of down. Obviously, like, when somebody passes away, we all process it differently. But I remember, he called to check up on me to see if I was going to skip class again, because it was only once a week, and we were getting down towards the end of the semester. And, it was sort of like he sort of challenged me in a sense of, like, I understand if you need another week, but at some point, as a leader, as a grown up, you have to pick yourself up and you got to move on. And it had nothing to do with the class, but it was, we talked about responsibility, we talked about leadership, and I never forgot that phone call. And when I talk to other people about their experiences in school, you don't get that kind of story. What professor calls you to make sure you're coming to class and then challenges you to do essentially what is the right thing? And I've used it a lot, when I hit hard times, we go on a 3-4 game losing streak. People are down around the office. It's like, guys, at some point it's okay to be sad, but you got to pick yourself up and we got to keep going. Life doesn't stop, and it's okay. But there's a responsibility that comes along with it. And, I always appreciated him and him checking up on me and making sure that I was trying to do the right thing. We had other professors that, did the same thing. Bill Kelly was my mentor for a couple of years, checked up on me, made sure I did the right things, as far as, my school academics. And so George Meese was a very good friend of mine. Coach Harley, Coach Ryan, they all did that. They all made sure that I was okay. And even now, Billy Evers called me up. I was in LA earlier this season, and we went out and had lunch. There's this sort of community and camaraderie with being part of that Eckerd, family, that we share so many common experiences. And I think that's what made me excited too about you getting this job. There have been other people who have held the position, but there's just something about Eckerd that, that only people who have been there kind of understand.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That family community, everyone's here for you, has got your back. And
yeah,
it's definitely nice to be around all the time.
Yeah. So I also got to shout out John Beckett and Tay Carter. John is an assistant coach with the Denver Nuggets, and Tay is with the Indiana Pacers. So we've kind of got this little NBA clique going now too, which is fun, because for a long time it was just myself and Bill Peterman, he played with Coach Ryan back in the 80s. He was an assistant coach with Milwaukee. He's moved on to other things. But now it's fun to see some of these younger guys coming up, and we have other guys that are overseas coaching and even getting playing careers in the pro league. So it's cool to see, like, on the basketball side, and some of these guys that went to Eckerd, making a career out of it.
Yeah, Triton's in the NBA.
Yep.
All right. Well, I thank you for tuning in and talking with me today, and thanks to everyone for watching as well. We'll see you on the next episode of Triton Talk.
Got to shout out Billy Matthews and Bill Butner.